To effect great change, you first have to believe. You have to believe that change is possible. You have to believe that you can make a difference.
It is from these beliefs that the Southern Center for Human Rights was born.
The Southern Center for Human Rights was founded in 1976 by people who believed that equal justice under law should be a reality.
And we're determined to fight against the societal barriers that eliminated the promise of equal justice.
For 40 years, the Southern Center has tirelessly worked to transform the criminal justice system in the region that blatantly turned justice on its head, the Deep South.
Valuing human life is at the forefront of the Southern Center's opposition to the death penalty.
We've argued 5 cases before the United States Supreme Court, challenging ineffective assistance of counsel and racial bias in jury selection.
But more importantly, we never give up on our clients and fight to save their lives as fiercely as we would save our own.
We do not tolerate human rights abuses in prisons and jails.
SCHR's class action litigation has reformed and, where necessary, closed jails and prisons throughout the South that have violated the human rights of people incarcerated.
We vigorously defend the constitutional right to counsel.
There will be no statewide public defender system in Georgia without the 5-year effort and 6 lawsuits brought by the Southern Center.
We continue to be the sole organization litigating to enforce the constitutional right to counsel for poor people accused of crimes throughout Georgia.
The Southern Center for Human Rights is sounding the alarm on the criminalization of poverty. We bring lawsuits to end practices like debtors' prisons. We've exposed and dismantled private probation extortion, illegal fines and fees, and other profit-seeking practices that criminalize people simply for being poor.
We work to end injustice whenever, wherever, and however it exists.
We do not do this work because it's popular.
We do this work because we believe.
We believe in the power of individuals to collectively make a difference.
We believe that justice is not justice if it is not equal.
We believe that everyone deserves dignity, respect, and compassion.
We believe that our children deserve to inherit a world that recognizes and values the humanity of every individual.
We believe the words of our hero, Frederick Douglass, are true. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground.
We believe in agitating for equal justice.
For 40 years, your support has fueled tremendous change in the criminal justice system in the South.
And with your partnership, we will continue working to reimagine equal justice. Thank you for believing with us.
Thank you for believing in us.
Together, we will reimagine equal justice and create the change we want to see.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Churchill, and I'm a lawyer at Morrison Foerster's Washington office. On behalf of Morrison Foerster, I'd like to welcome you to the Southern Center for Human Rights 21st Annual Awards Dinner. We support wholeheartedly the Southern Center and its mission, and in particular, tonight's deserving honorees. We applaud both the staff and the board of the Southern Center for their tireless efforts to achieve equal justice for all. Enjoy this great occasion, and thank you all for being part of it.
Good evening. Welcome to the Southern Center for Human Rights Frederick Douglass Awards Dinner.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Evers Manley, Vice President of Global Corporate Responsibility for Northrop Grumman and President of the Northrop Grumman Foundation. I'm honored to be here this evening to recognize and to salute and truly say thank you to the Southern Center for Human Rights and to celebrate the 2020 Frederick Douglass Awards. I know tonight is a little different, but this year has been different. It's been a year of struggle. It's been a year of sacrifice. And in many ways, it's been a year of great pain. That is why the work of the Southern Center for Human Rights is needed now more than ever. It was Frederick Douglass who said, "There is no progress without a struggle." Where would we be without the Southern Center for Human Rights? They have been on the battlefield. They have been in the prisons. They've been in the courtrooms. They've been in the streets and more. Their work is so needed. To all the volunteers, to the staff, to all the supporters, your work is not in vain. If it was not for you, individuals such as Curtis Flowers would not be free. Yes, he's had dark days, but today there are brighter days because of the Southern Center for Human Rights. Tonight, we celebrate and we salute the incredible defense team of Mr. Flowers. We say thank you. And to you, Mr. Flowers, to you and your family, we will continue to lift you up and keep you in our prayers. This year, because of COVID, because of social injustice in our streets, we cannot rest until victory is won. That is why the work of the center is needed now more than ever. And that is why tonight the center has selected one of the greatest minds in our nation, Dr. Ibram Kendi, to lead us, to provide discussion. We need conversations, we need dialogue, we need great healing. And the mission of the center is needed now more than ever. Their fight for justice, their fight for equality, and their fight for dignity for all. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. And let's continue the mission until we have great healing throughout our country, throughout our world. The quest for equality is needed. The quest for justice is needed. Let's not forget why we're here and what we must do to bring others up so that injustice will not be a part of our society. Thank you for this opportunity and have a great night.
Hi, I'm Zoe Bookbinder. I am a folk singer and part of the Prison Music Project Collective, and we are a group of artists and writers, most of whom are currently or formerly incarcerated. And together we worked on an album which released earlier this year on Righteous Babe Records, and the funds from the sales of that record are administered by the Southern Center for Human Rights, who we are so honored to work with, and they help us direct those funds so that they can benefit incarcerated and formerly incarcerated communities. Because it's COVID, we released this record in an unconventional way, and we had an online release show, and you're going to see a little part of that right now. We're so honored to work with Southern Center for Human Rights. Thank you. This is the last song on the record that we're playing too, so I should say that. We have some more songs to play, but this is the last song from Long Time Gone that we're playing. It is called Long Time Gone. It's by Ken Blackburn. And I like to think of this song as a breakup song with the criminal justice system because we are in a toxic relationship. Making me feel so low. Remember the good book says you gotta reap what you sow. You've been bragging to your friends about treating me this way. Remember, darling, every dog has his day. I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. Taking all my money, to you it's just a game. Got everybody talking, how it's a dirty shame. I'm tired of you jiving, the way you carry on. When I get to leaving, be a long time gone. I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. Yes, I'm tired of all your cheating and the way you've been carrying on. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone. When I get around to leaving, gonna be a long time gone.
Good evening, and welcome to the 24th Annual Frederick Douglass Awards from the Southern Center for Human Rights. My name is Sarah Tatanchi, and I am exceptionally proud to have served as Executive Director of the Southern Center for the last decade, and to be here tonight representing our remarkable team. We are thrilled and honored to have you with us this evening as we pay tribute to Curtis Flowers and his defense team for their extraordinary struggle for human rights and equal justice. We are grateful to all of tonight's sponsors who were featured on the slideshow you just saw and will see again later. In particular, we want to recognize our presenting sponsors, Maureen Del Duca, Susan and Jeffrey Sussman, and Jake Sussman and Jessica Flaxman, Morrison and Forster, and Northrop Grumman. And thanks to each and every one of you who have supported the Southern Center in 2020. We are thrilled to have so many of you viewing tonight across the country. Hello, DC. Hello, San Francisco. Hello, New York. Hello, Atlanta. Hello to everyone. We are heartened to be supported by so many. Your friendship and solidarity mean more to us than I can adequately express. Thank you. Thank you also to Zoe Bookbinder, Ani DeFranco, and the Prison Music Project for sharing their gorgeous and moving music with all of us tonight. You'll hear another piece from them later this evening. And thank you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, for sharing his wisdom and insight with us at this critical moment in our nation's history. Our event tonight is dedicated to the civil rights and social justice giants from our community whom we have lost this year. Congressman John Lewis, Reverends Murphy Davis, Joseph Lowery, and C.T. Vivian, we honor, remember, and celebrate you tonight and always. Tonight, we also hold space for the more than 1,300 people who have died of COVID-19 while incarcerated in American prisons this year. In particular, we remember our clients and friends, Chantrice Murray and Moselle Anderson. The Southern Center for Human Rights is working for equality, dignity, and justice for people impacted by the criminal legal system in the Deep South. We fight every day for a world that is free from mass incarceration, the death penalty, and the criminalization of poverty. There is so much to say about our full body of work, but tonight, I'm going to focus my remarks on our work to end racial injustice in the criminal legal system, starting with the story of Johnny Gates. On November 30th, 1976, just 3 weeks after Jimmy Carter was elected president, a 19-year-old white woman was shot and killed in her apartment in Columbus, Georgia. One witness who lived in the apartment complex promptly told police that she saw a white man running away from the building at the time of the murder. 2 days later, a 19-year-old white man was found fondling the victim's body while it lay in its casket at a funeral home. The police arrested that man, and he made a full confession to the killing. And according to the officers, he told the police details about the crime that only the true killer would have known. But without any explanation, prosecutors asked the grand jury not to indict this man, and he was never charged. However, 2 months after the murder, 21-year-old Johnny Gates was arrested, and the district attorney announced that he would be seeking the death penalty. At the start of the trial, the prosecutors made sure to use all their strikes to eliminate every single Black prospective juror from sitting on Johnny's case. The all-white jury took 95 minutes to convict Johnny and 58 minutes to give him the death penalty. Johnny went on to spend more than 40 years in prison, with 27 of those years on death row. But in 2017, 40 years after his trial, the Southern Center for Human Rights, along with the Georgia Innocence Project, uncovered new evidence in his case. Our team uncovered new DNA evidence that did not belong to Johnny, and also profound race discrimination that infected Johnny's trial from the start. You see, while picking the jury for the trial, the prosecutors took notes. Their notes show beyond any doubt that the prosecutors' jury strikes were the product of systematic race discrimination to make sure that Johnny was tried by an all-white jury. Here's how we know. The prosecutors labeled the prospective jurors by race, writing W next to the white juror names and N next to the Black jurors. They singled out the Black prospective jurors by marking dots in the margins next to their names. And they went on to describe the Black prospective jurors using derogatory words such as slow, old and ignorant, cocky, con artist, hostile, and fat. I want to tell you a little bit about the woman who the prosecutor excluded from serving on Johnny's jury because she was hostile, Ms. Annie Hargrove. Ms. Hargrove was 34 years old at the time, a lifetime resident of Columbus, and was one of the first special education teachers in Georgia. She helped children who were struggling to succeed and ultimately graduate from high school. When my coworker visited Ms. Hargrove in 2017, she's now Mrs. Turner and is a retired grandmother in her mid-70s. She shared with her Johnny's story and the prosecutor's notes. Ms. Turner was absolutely shocked. She said that she would never go into a courtroom and be hostile because she feared that she would be sent to jail. She teared up and said, "Black people don't have the luxury to be hostile in a courtroom." Mrs. Turner came to court to hear us put on the evidence of race discrimination. She sat in the front row, and as she sat, her sadness grew, not just because of the racism she personally experienced, but because of the treatment and the outcome for Johnny Gates, who reminded her of children she had worked with in school. It took 42 years to right the wrong in Johnny Gates's case, 42 long years. I'm going to tell you more about that later. And what happened to Johnny is in no way unique. What happened to Mrs. Turner is also not unique. It is also not a thing of the past. Indeed, we see similar injustices year after year at the hands of racist prosecutors in Curtis Flowers' case, which we are honored to spotlight tonight. Tonight, we celebrate Curtis Flowers' incredible victory and the extraordinary work he did with his defense team that made his freedom possible today. Curtis's and Johnny's cases demonstrate that racism continues to play an enormous role in the criminal legal system, particularly in capital cases. This is a systemic problem. Stereotypes are made daily about people based on their race, both in the courts and on the streets. Too often, these generalizations determine whether or not a person will live. To some, the lives of certain people and groups are deemed disposable based on their race. Our country is reeling from story after story of unarmed Black people being killed by police officers. In 2020, there have been countless mornings that began with the news of the killing of another Black person by police. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and so many more. We mourn the lives of those killed by racism, like Ahmaud Arbery, who was hunted down while jogging in Brunswick, Georgia. And there are so many more names to call out who have not made the national news, especially right here in Georgia. As of today, in 2020 alone, Georgia has amassed 81 police shootings of civilians. We see racism play out in every part of the criminal legal system. This is particularly problematic when the target of this abuse is our youth. For example, the Southern Center is representing a group of young people in a class action lawsuit that challenges their group arrest while they were attending a party in Cartersville, Georgia. This party was held back when we could actually gather in groups, and the majority of guests were in their late teens or early 20s, and they were totally stunned when police entered the house without a warrant, claiming to have smelled marijuana, even though the patrol car's windows were closed. When a small amount of marijuana was found and the police were unable to pin it to any of the partygoers, they arrested everyone there, over 60 people. Some of these young people were held in jail 3 days, some in isolation, some were strip searched. One of the young people described being treated inhumanely, like an animal. 12 days after the arrests, the district attorney dismissed the charges. However, the damage was done, not only in the terrible treatment of the young people by law enforcement, but the arrests had been highly publicized and there were serious consequences. Some young people lost their jobs. Others had their military enrollments deferred. one partygoer was kicked off a sports team. Prior to this mass arrest, our client, Ms. G, was 22 years old and a first-time mother to a 1-year-old. And she was finally feeling like her life was getting back on track. She had just gotten a new job at a Mexican restaurant. She had found stable housing, had bought her son's Christmas gifts on her own for the first time, and was attending school to earn her cosmetology license, and overall feeling very hopeful. Ms. G went to the party after finishing her shift and was there less than an hour before she was arrested. She was jailed for 3 days, and in that time, she lost her new job. Her employer saw her mugshot on the news and fired her. But the consequences of her arrest did not stop there. She struggled financially as a result of losing this job. She was homeless for a period of time and had to visit a food pantry in order to feed herself and her baby, and she had to drop out of school. Remember, she is just one of 60 people who are arrested that night. All of this loss, this trauma, this violence, because 3 officers were driving through a predominantly Black and brown neighborhood and saw a few young men outside a house and decided that this was just not acceptable. We also see a color-coded pattern of discrimination when it comes to sentencing practices in our country. Harsh drug sentencing laws became the national norm in the 1980s and 1990s, but few states adopted laws as sweeping as Georgia's. In Georgia, a Black person was 2,700% more likely to receive a life sentence than a white person. In fact, all of the people serving life without parole for drug offenses in Georgia were Black. This year, we had the privilege of representing Samuel Smart in his quest for freedom. Samuel was serving a life without parole sentence for drugs and had already served 22 years in prison, during which he did absolutely everything he possibly could do. He took all of the programs offered. He worked consistently in the kitchen and as an orderly. He read books voraciously. He had 0 disciplinary infractions, a near impossible achievement inside prison. He did all this while facing no promise of ever leaving prison. But thanks to his hard work and commitment, he was resentenced to time served in August and walked out of prison a free man and into the arms of his wife, Dot, who stood with him for all of those years. Samuel was the very last person serving life without parole in Georgia for drugs, because over the last 5 years, thanks to your support, my colleagues worked closely with every person similarly situated and helped get them all resentenced and released. We are thrilled to have been part of these victories, but we cannot look away from the extraordinary waste of locking up so many Black people for such incredibly long periods of time. In the wake of these tragedies, there is a temptation to give up hope that people of color will ever have a fair chance at the hands of the American criminal legal system. There may even be a tendency to concede that perhaps the time has come, as Steve Wright has often remarked, to sandblast the words equal justice under law off the Supreme Court building and acknowledge that there are different systems of justice that depend on a person's race. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Ibram Kendi, wrote in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. The good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be a racist one minute and an anti-racist in the next. What we say about race and what we do about race in each moment determines what, not who we are. So what are we going to do? At the Southern Center, we are going to keep fighting, as we have for more than 40 years, because the struggle for racial justice is the struggle of our lifetime. With your continued support, we will litigate and agitate against mass incarceration, the death penalty, and the criminalization of poverty until they are all pieces of a bygone era, however long that takes. We will keep standing with people who are fighting for their freedom. We recognize the incredible privilege that we have, and we seek to honor and uplift their humanity, dignity, and experiences. We will challenge historic, shameful norms and confront the remnants of slavery in the South and agitate for a systemic change. We are going to, as Miriam Kaba shares, nurture hope, not as an emotion or some sense of optimism, but as a discipline that we practice every single day. And now we have an opportunity to learn and grow as we hear from one of the nation's foremost historians and leading anti-racist voices. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi is a National Book Award-winning and 3-time #1 New York Times bestselling author, including for his seminal book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Dr. Kendi is the Andrew W. Mellon Professor in the Humanities and the founding director of the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. He is a contributing writer at The Atlantic and a CBS News racial justice contributor. In 2020, Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. We are so grateful to have him with us tonight.
So it's truly an honor for me to address the Southern Center for Human Rights and its supporters and its staff, and really everyone who is fighting in the South and fighting across the United States and even fighting across the world for human rights. Because, and one of the things when I think of just the critical importance of working for equality, of working for justice, of working for dignity, I see this as an existential importance. In other words, this world is facing 3 lethal weapons that is threatening human existence. And of course, we have, fortunately, decades ago, we were talking about nuclear war, which of course remains an existential threat. Increasingly, we've talked, rightfully so, about climate change, which is an existential threat to human existence. But what else is also an existential threat is bigotry, is the denial of human rights to every single individual living, is the denial of justice and equality, is societies so split by injustices, so ravaged by inequities, that people are turning on each other. And so just as you could have a bomb destroy us all, just as the climate, because we refuse to address the way in which it's changing, can destroy us all, so too can we destroy ourselves. And the only antidote to that, the only thing that can save us, the only thing that can ensure that humankind lives is human rights. And so that's one of the things that causes me to fight so fiercely against all forms of bigotry, but most especially against racism that literally divides people, that literally snatches resources and snatches safety and snatches a sense of joy in cases when experiencing trauma from people because of the color of their skin, and imagines that certain people, because of the color of their skin, are more, and that's why they have more, that other people, because of the color of their skin, are less, and that's why they are less. And all the while we have these southern and northern and communities and communities across the world where there's these massive racial disparities in which Black people and brown people are being disproportionately incarcerated, disproportionately victims of capital punishment, disproportionately in poverty. And all the while, people are blaming the very victims. They're blaming people of color for being more likely to be poor. They're blaming Black and brown people for being more likely to be incarcerated to being more likely to suffering the death penalty because they've been taught that the problem is people, that the problem is those darker people, that the problem is those poor people, that the problem is especially those Black and brown poor people, as opposed to being taught, as opposed to us recognizing that indeed the problem is policy, that indeed the problem is policy, that the problem is these structures and systems that fundamentally are harming and maintaining and recycling racial injustice and economic injustice year in and year out. And that we as humans have the capacity, have the ability to transform that injustice, to eliminate that injustice, to create justice, to ensure that poverty is not criminalized, that if anything, poverty is eliminated. And that's how we need to be thinking. To be anti-racist is to be thinking that the problem is indeed power and policy. To be racist is to be thinking that the problem is people. To be racist is to be going after and demonizing and denigrating and putting down those people. To be anti-racist is to be going after and challenging and seeking to rid our communities of those racist policies, of those people who continue to defend and institute those policies. But ultimately, we should be asking the question, we should be asking the question, how can we eliminate these injustices? So when we're thinking about transforming policies, it's not enough to think about reducing the number of people who are incarcerated. It's not enough to reduce the number of people who are on death row. It's not enough to reduce the number of people who are impoverished. It's certainly those types of gradual policies will certainly help the people who are being freed, but ultimately it doesn't eliminate the problem. Just as 200 years ago, you had folks who were advocating for the gradual emancipation from slavery, not immediate emancipation, not this system of poverty and mass incarceration and police violence is fundamentally corrupt and evil and needs to end and cannot live another day, as abolitionists said then. Why can't we say the same thing now? Why can't we be asking the questions? What policies can we put in place that eliminates mass incarceration, that creates a system in which poverty is not criminalized? How can we end poverty? How can we eliminate police violence? How can we create a criminal justice system that is not functioning in the way masters used to function? Because in many ways, yes, chattel slavery ended, but the law became the master. And people of color, particularly Black and brown and Native people, have been brutalized and terrorized and incarcerated en masse by the state, by the law, in the way we used to face from slaveholders in the Southeast or even in the Southwest. And so we're at a moment in time in which we need to be thinking about how to abolish racism. And we need to be leaning in to that moment, to that time in history, where indeed our ancestors were calling for the abolition of slavery. We can right now be calling for the abolition of racism, because racism should not live another day. Racial injustice and poverty and mass incarceration should not live another day. And to be anti-racist is to fight for that other world. It's to fight for that new world. It's to fight for freedom. Because ultimately, Black folks have been engaged in a freedom fight ever since we were forced to come to this land. We've been fighting for the freedom to be ourselves. We've been fighting for the freedom to have equal resources and opportunities. We've been fighting for the freedom to not be seen as dangerous, just to be seen as another human being with basic rights that every single human being should have. And this is the type of nation, this is the type of world, this is the type of South we should be focused on. And so I just want to salute each of you who've been engaged in this human rights struggle, who've been engaged in this struggle to ensure that every single human life has a right to freedom, has a right to justice, has a right to dignity, has a right to live and be in happiness. Because that's what we're fighting for. And that's what I'll always fight for. Thank you.
The Frederick Douglass Award from the Southern Center for Human Rights recognizes and celebrates individuals and organizations that have made significant contributions to the enhancement of human rights in the justice system. On behalf of the Southern Center's Board of Directors, our staff, and our community at large, we are beyond thrilled to honor the champions for Mr. Curtis Flowers, a man who was tried 6 times for the murder of 4 people in a furniture store in Mississippi. 2 trials resulted in a hung jury, while the other 4 trials saw his conviction and death sentence overturned due to prosecutorial misconduct. This award recognizes the awe-inspiring and instructive way the team combined its immense talents for a multi-pronged approach to save Mr. Flowers' life and expose the rampant injustice in his case. As did the great Frederick Douglass, this extraordinary team strives to protect and promote human rights and agitate on behalf of the disenfranchised and oppressed. And we are proud to pay tribute to their remarkable work. With this award, we honor their bold advocacy, their unshakable commitment to speaking truth to power, and their palpable compassion. I am honored to now present to you the champions for Curtis Flowers.
My name's Jonathan Abram, Senior Pro Bono Counsel at Hogan Lovells, and along with a wonderful team at the firm, I've represented Curtis Flowers since 2014.
My name is David Maxwell, and I'm an attorney at Hogan Lovells, and was one of the attorneys who led our representation of Curtis Flowers.
I'm Katie Ali, and I'm a senior associate at Hogan Lovells, and I'm part of the team that worked on Curtis's post-conviction proceedings starting in 2015.
My name is Ashley Johnson, and I'm the senior pro bono paralegal at Hogan Lovells. My role in the case was helping support the attorneys with pretty much anything they needed.
My name is Ben Lewis, and I'm one of Curtis Flowers' post-conviction attorneys.
My name is Tucker Carrington, and I am the director of the George C. Innocence Project. I became involved in the Curtis Flowers case in the post-conviction phase of the case.
My name is Max Mays. I'm a retired criminal investigator, and I was the investigator for the Curtis Flowers case.
I'm Henderson Hill with the ACLU Capital Punishment Project. I was asked to join lead counsel Rob McDuff to forge the trial team for Curtis Flowers.
I first became involved in the defense of Curtis Flowers in 2019 as the United States Supreme Court was about to send the case back to the Mississippi Trial Court for a potential and unprecedented 7th trial.
Keir Weibel and Sherry Johnson were Curtis's lawyers on his direct appeal after his 6th conviction. They argued the case at Mississippi Supreme Court, and then twice successfully sought cert in the U.S. Supreme Court and argued the case a second time and prevailed.
Curtis Flowers was tried 6 times and spent 23 years in prison for crimes he did not commit. We started representing Curtis at the beginning of 2015, along with Tucker Carrington and the Mississippi Innocence Project.
Initially, we reinvestigated his case, uncovered new evidence in support of innocence, and developed dozens of claims for post-conviction relief.
I used to work at the Southern Center. I had done the kind of work that we ended up doing for a piece of our post-conviction pleading, and I just reproduced it along with the Hogan Lovells folks. And in that way, it's really nice to be able to connect the dots from the mid-90s to the Curtis Flowers case.
Due to my inquisitive nature, it was something that I wanted to take a look at and see why over 5 trials is this man still being tried, number one, and what was the evidence that the courts saw when they overturned the case.
Among the many sins of District Attorney Doug Evans, in addition to the racial discrimination he practiced in trial after trial, was his continued insistence that Curtis Flowers was the only suspect and there were no alternative suspects.
We were challenged to actually prove Curtis's actual innocence. In doing so, we were fortunate to build on the 10 years of extraordinary appellate and post-conviction investigation and litigation.
Curtis's story reads to me like something out of Mississippi in 1956, not 1996. I think it's an important example of how racism remains pervasive in our criminal legal system today.
Curtis was the victim of egregious prosecutorial misconduct and racial bias. And while he's now a free man, it is appalling and tragic that it took 23 years to reach that result.
In addition to advocating and representing a good and decent man, this case had significance as a matter of history, as part of the struggle to prove and make the American legal system acknowledge that Black lives matter.
His name is on a U.S. Supreme Court case. It stands for something, and that something is fortitude and strength and courage, and ultimately it stands for the right thing.
To be someone who spent so much time locked up, the amount of resilience to be as open and loving as Curtis is, it just blows me away.
Curtis, simply put, has become one of my closest friends. He jokes with me all the time about being stuck with him for life, and I hope that he knows that he's stuck with me too.
The most memorable thing for me about this case has been Curtis himself, and the way that he has continued through years of adversity with the most upbeat and positive attitude.
He never lost hope that the right result would ultimately happen. He was the dream client, and I will always remember representing Curtis because of that.
And now we'll have remarks by Mr. Curtis Flowers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the Southern Center for Human Rights for this honor. I am so very blessed. I am blessed with a family that never gave up on me, and I am blessed with faith in the Lord. Thank you for your protection, your comfort, your guidance, and providing for me. I had some dark days, the day I was arrested and the days I was convicted for a crime I did not commit. But there have been some bright days too. I will never forget the day the judge granted bail and I walked out of jail. I will never forget the day some months later when my lawyers told me and my family that the charges had been dropped and I was truly a free man again. I know that the Southern Center is one of the leaders in that struggle. And I say to all those still fighting for justice and to the lawyers fighting for them, it took 23 years for me. So keep the faith and know that the fight is so worth it. It may be long, it may be a long one, but there is hope in justice. Thank you, and I love you all. Curtis Flowers.
James Kwok is a professor at the University of Connecticut's School of Law and a New York Times bestselling author. He is also the chair of the board of the Southern Center for Human Rights, and it is in that capacity that we know and love James. Thanks to James' generosity, a new fellowship for law students who have just graduated was established at the Southern Center. It is called the Noah Pardon and Stiles Hutchins Fellowship, and it brings an incredible wealth of expertise and passion to our work. James is also one of our most dedicated and fierce cheerleaders, and we are so grateful to him for all he does for our work. James Kwok.
Hi, thank you for joining us for dinner this evening, and I hope you're enjoying your dessert as much as I am. I'm sorry we can't be together this evening in person, but if you ever swing by my way in Western Massachusetts, I'd be more than happy to take you out for ice cream or even offer you homemade cookies. Right now, I'd like everyone to send a silent message of thanks to all the people who made this evening possible. Our generous sponsors, Executive Director Sarah Tatanchi, Deputy Director Terika Ganzi, and the staff of the Southern Center, our speakers, particularly Dr. Ibram Kendi, the defense team of Curtis Flowers, whom we are here to honor, and Mr. Curtis Flowers himself for honoring us with his presence this evening. 2020 has been a year of tremendous tragedy, but it's also been a year in which was lit a spark of hope, a fragile spark, but nevertheless, hope that we could see a better world where the state does not kill people, where incarceration is not a tool of racial and class oppression, and where all people can enjoy equal justice. Where America might be able to live up to the promise that for so long it's claimed to uphold. And someday people may look back on this year, on 2020, as a turning point in the struggle for that better world. But that can only happen because of all of you, because of the civil rights lawyers, investigators, social workers, public defenders, everybody on the front lines fighting for their clients' lives and for their rights. Because of lawyers at firms who take cases pro bono, because of community organizers, because of politicians, because of people in the media, both old and new, who illuminate injustice in all its forms. And because of everybody who takes a moment to speak out and support this movement for justice. This evening, you've heard some stories, some truly amazing stories of courage and dedication. But everyone here can make a difference. I just ask you that you ask yourself what you can do. Of course, one way you can help is with your financial contributions. The Southern Center is heavily dependent on contributions from individuals, and without you, our work simply would not be possible. It's your generosity that saves people's lives, that reunites them with their families after decades in prison, and that helps give people back the dignity that the criminal legal system tries so hard to take away from them. So if you have the ability to give, I ask only that you think about how valuable the work of the Southern Center is to you. And of course, there are other ways to help participate in this movement. Learn more, educate yourself and the people around you. Talk to your family and to your friends about the Southern Center, about injustice in the criminal legal system, and about what they can do. Protest, vote, do these things, and someday you'll tell your children, I hope, that you are part of a great movement for justice in 21st century America. So with that, good night, stay healthy, and I hope we can see each other in person next year.
Thank you so much, James. In 2020, we are reminded that the change that we are seeking, that we work for every single day, is not one that comes suddenly. We take direction and inspiration from the giants in our community who dedicated their lives to working for the liberation of all, who were so generous with their wisdom. Our beloved Congressman John Lewis said that our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. No one appreciates how slow justice can take than someone who is waiting for it to come while in prison. Curtis Flowers knows this. Johnny Gates knows this. I'm overjoyed to share with you that on May 15, 2020, Johnny Gates walked out of court a free man for the first time in 43 years. He has spent the last 6 months adjusting to his new life, in the middle of a pandemic, no less. Adjusting has been hard, but he's doing okay. He just signed a lease for a house, It's across the street from a park where he sits on the front porch every morning and drinks coffee. He just got his learner's permit and is planning on taking the driving test soon. And last week, he voted. For the first time in his life, Johnny voted. He has new friends who support him, and he sends his Southern Center lawyers an email every morning when he wakes up between 4 and 5 a.m. Justice is brought about by hard work, diligent struggle, innovative thinking, boundless courage, tremendous compassion, and the generosity of members of our community who share our values and beliefs that we can and will build a better world. We know that this struggle for racial justice is the struggle of our lifetime, and we need all of you to struggle alongside us. Together, it is our hope that our struggle will be so transformative that the tragedies that are caused by racism are truly abominations that halt us in our tracks, rather than simply the heartbreaking news of the day. Tonight, together, we affirm that there are so many of us that can nurture hope and the endless possibilities to build a better world. Our sister and Shiro Murphy Davis reminds us that our only hope is in a relentless practice of sharing, solidarity, resistance, compassion, a revolution rooted in love. Though it may be a long and often grueling battle, the good in humanity has always prevailed over the bad. I like to think that this is at least in some small part because of the work that the Southern Center for Human Rights is committed to doing every day, supported generously and loyally by all of you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your contributions that keep us in the struggle for hope and racial justice, the struggle of our lifetime. And as I bid you all good night, we will hear one more time from the Prison Music Project and share the words of the heroes to whom we have dedicated tonight's event. Thank you and good night.
It's all